Okay, I just muted folks, and I will unmute you as the time comes. Well, good evening. It is 6 o'clock on the 4th of May, 2020, and I will call the Missoula City Council meeting of May 4th, 2020 to order. So Marty or Kirsten, let's take that down because I need to see some things. That just eats my entire screen. Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, we are in a virtual meeting. The meeting is being broadcast this evening on Spectrum Cable Channel 190. Also, you can stream this on the city's website through our agenda. The meeting is live there. In both cases, the case of the streaming and the cable broadcast, there is a slight delay. So when you call in and you hear me start to ask people to participate in the meeting, please mute your television and listen to your phone because we're operating in 2 time zones at that point, and it's really challenging. The numbers to call are 1-253-215-8782 and 1-888-475-4499. And the meeting ID is 960-049-3694. We have all council members virtually present this evening. We don't have any meetings, any minutes from our meetings, but we do have a committee schedule. Ms. Rabine, would you read that? And Kirsten, if you would put up the call numbers again while Ms. Rabine reads the committee schedule.
Thanks, Mary. Again, so we do have committee meetings. We're returning to some semblance of normal. And so we have 3 committee meetings this week, Wednesday on May 6th. Administration and Finance Committee will start us off at 1:20 in the afternoon and go till 1:30. Public Works Committee goes from 1:50 to 2:25. And Land Use and Planning Committee will go from 2:45 to 3:45. And again, folks can tune in to these meetings on our live or on demand on our agenda on the city website. So if you go to the city's main homepage, which is www.ci.missoula.mt.us, and click on the meetings button, that'll take you to virtual meeting central for the city of Missoula, and you'll be able to access the agendas and watch online. And as always, as we've done for years and years and years, we are always live casting on cable channel 190. That's Missoula Community Access Television. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Are there any changes to the committee schedule this evening? If so, if you'd please raise your hand for me. So Kirsten, is chat enabled?
No, it's been disabled.
So I'm guessing you can only raise your hand if chat is enabled. Is that correct? Or can you all?
No, if you click on the participant button, it will bring up everyone to the side.
Got it.
You can raise your hand there.
Okay, I see hands raising right and left. Thank you very much. Seeing no changes to that committee schedule, we will move on to the public comment portion of our agenda. And in this virtual environment, because it's very difficult to sort out any of this, you're welcome to comment on any non-agenda or agenda item at this time. If you would please identify yourself for the record and keep your comments to 3 minutes, please. And I'm admitting a caller now. Hello, caller.
Oh Oh, no, that's me, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Mr. Ramos has left one part of the virtual meeting and is back in the other. Okay, we have no one in our waiting room for comment at this time. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Those items were approved unanimously. Generally speaking, in council committees, we haven't had any of those. So all we have this week is our list of claims. And Ms. Rabine, would you mind presenting that item, please?
No problem. So item number one, the first and only item on the consent agenda tonight is to approve claims, which are the city's accounts payable in the amount of $1,698,472.76 for checks that are dated tomorrow, May 5th, 2020.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we will have a roll call vote.
Okay, on the consent agenda, Anderson.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, Ms. Hart, did you have something?
I did. I was wondering if there could be an explanation regarding on page 8 and 9 regarding the government leasing and finance. It's a 5-year capital lease, and I just was wondering if a little explanation could be provided, please.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, Ms. Rabine.
All right, on the consent agenda, Anderson.
I voted yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Contos.
Yes.
Harp.
Yes.
Hess.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Vasika.
Yes.
Von Lossberg.
Yes.
And West.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 12 ayes.
And the consent agenda is approved. We don't have any comments from city staff, agencies, boards, commissions, authorities, or the community forum this evening, nor are there any special presentations, but we do have a public hearing. Pardon me, state law and our own council rules require public hearings for certain items that are before this body. And following a staff report is our usual practice. Council will deliberate and vote. In the interests of transparency and providing folks opportunity to comment, what we're going to do is hold this public hearing and most public hearings in the future open. So this evening, Mr. Keene and Ms. Griffin will present this item with regard to the build grant, and we will hold the public hearing open until our next regular meeting. So folks can comment from this evening on in the various ways that are provided. And then we will take this as a committee report at our next regular meeting. So a little bit of change of procedure there. And our sole public hearing again is on a resolution amending the fiscal year 2020 budget to appropriate expenditures for the build grant project. I don't know if Lee or Jeremy are taking the lead here. Lee is. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Actually, we are both going to speak to this item. I just wanted to introduce this item and remind folks of our budget amendment process. The state law allows a governing body to amend the budget during the fiscal year by conducting public hearings at regularly scheduled meetings that have been publicly noticed. And that is what we are doing today. We are asking City Council to approve a resolution amending the budget to allow for expending impact fee revenues on the build grant. And Jeremy Keene can speak to that more if folks have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Mr. Keene.
Good evening, Jeremy Keene, Public Works Director. I'd like to try to share my screen. I can.
You're working.
Okay. I just wanted to provide a little bit of context to how this budget amendment fits in the larger project. And as you know, we're working on a large project for the build area. A little bit of background about the project and what our future steps are here. So the build project is to address rapid growth and a lack of infrastructure in an area of town that really is limited to one primary route of Mullan Road. And so we're trying to connect some new streets between Mullan Road and Broadway, which will help alleviate some congestion, create some improved safety. And the net result is about 3 miles of new roads, 3.7 miles of new trails, and about a half mile of stream restoration and flood control on Grant Creek. And all of this will open up access to about 1,500 acres of developable land in that area. So there were 4 major things that we hope to achieve with the build grant. First and foremost, safety, both for non-motorized users by creating more trail connections and complete streets. And then also sidewalks, or excuse me, for motorized drivers, trying to address some safety issues at intersections where we're seeing problems. Traffic congestion, as I mentioned, Mullan Road being one of the primary routes in and out, all has to go through Mullan and Reserve. So this will provide some alternative routes. Also reduce the vehicle miles because the trips can be more direct, and less idling means less vehicle emissions. So we get improved air quality. And that 1,500 acres of land, we expect that the construction project itself will create about 349 jobs, but long-term that area will support an estimated 7,000 future jobs. And when that area builds out, when all that area develops, that's as much as $2.6 billion in new taxable value. So it's a significant new part of our city. And we're really working hard to make this a walkable neighborhood, to provide good options for transportation that don't rely solely on single vehicles. So creating mixed use neighborhoods, safe walkable routes to school, transit service, and really thinking about how we connect up with our commuter trail network. So the process we've been going through, if you'll remember, we did a resolution back in July of 2019 in support of a build grant. We successfully, we were able to achieve that grant, or excuse me, we were able to get that grant. And that was awarded in November. And we proceeded immediately with selecting a consultant to help us design the project. So we got a consultant on board in December, and we signed an interlocal agreement with the county in February to help us fund the initial portion of the work. So the way this worked out is for the project development costs, the city's going to pay 2/3 of the cost, and Missoula County will pay 1/3. And what we're doing here is we're using our local funding to accelerate the process by paying for the project development work up front. So this is the scoping and the preliminary design work that has to happen ahead of getting authorization to use the build money. So it lets us move forward a little more quickly than just waiting to use the federal money. So those steps are a scoping phase. This was basically figuring out what's required to design the project and what's required to use the build funds. That's followed up by a preliminary engineering phase. This is all the survey, the geotechnical engineering, the traffic modeling, figuring out alignments and grades, and the public involvement that will go into the project. And what we'll get out of this is a 30% design for the entire Mullan build project. So all of the roads and trails that we're planning on building eventually. It will also help us identify the priorities for using the build grant funds. So if you remember, we didn't get the full grant amount. We asked for 23 million, we got 13. So we're prioritizing where we're going to spend that first $13 million. You can see the city's share of those two efforts. These are substantial efforts, takes a lot of time and effort to get all of this ready to go. So the city shares about 27,000 and 732,000 of those initial efforts. And the remaining share of the city's portion of this will come in the final design and construction phase, and that'll be the remaining $2 million. And in addition to that, we will also fund utilities that are related to the development of that area. And those will be funded through development fees. And of course, we'll use the $13 million of build. So these are the routes that we're prioritizing. We broke the project down a little bit more in a little bit more detail to look at 5 road segments and 5 trail segments. And we're going through a process of prioritizing or deciding which ones of those we want to build first. We set up a committee, a prioritization committee consisting of city and county representatives. 2 members of council helped us out with this. And we also had representatives from the Chamber, Missoula Organization of Realtors, and Missoula Building Industry Association. So these were our stakeholders that helped us get the grant and have really advocated for the project. And so they're helping us decide where to go first with that build money. And they used the same 4 criteria that we laid out in the grant and that I went through before: safety, congestion, economic development, and transportation options. In addition to those, we will also take a look at independent utility, which is something that's required for the federal money, meaning each project has to have its own purpose, beginning and end, and be functional. And we'll also look at right-of-way availability and cost. And we'll be bringing those recommendations to council and probably in the next couple of weeks. So here's our schedule. I like to say that we're moving at light speed for a transportation project. This, if you think about Russell Street, it took us practically 20 years to break ground. We're hoping to break ground in a little over a year on this one. So we're moving fast and pushing pretty hard to get it ready. We're in the process of doing this preliminary engineering right now. And midsummer, we'll have that 30% design and estimate. And from there, we have to go through an environmental clearance process, identifying what the impacts of the project are, making sure that we have all our permits in place, and then we'll put together the grant funding agreement and hope to have all that done by the end of 2020 and be in a position to be bidding the project and under construction next spring for the first phases. A couple of years to build it out. We have until 2026 to spend all of the build money. We hope to have that done well before 26. Okay, so why we're here tonight. This budget motion, basically what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that we have enough budget authority to get through the end of the fiscal year for FY20. So we had 3 existing CIPs that related to projects that were part of the build grant. So we already had a CIP for George Elmer Drive, for Mary Jane North, and Mary Jane South. And so together, those amounted to $465,000. This budget request adds another $135,000 so that we have $600,000 total budget authority for the remainder of FY20. And the funding is coming from transportation impact fees for that. What you'll see in the next budget cycle in FY21 is we'll request the remainder of that $2 million commitment. So additional $1.4 million for the rest of the project, which will be spent on the design effort and most likely a portion of the construction effort. We're also in the process, and you'll see this in committee this week, we have a Build 2020 grant that we're putting together. So we're trying to get the last $10 million of that grant with a request for the 2020 grant cycle. So you'll see the Build 2020 resolution in committee on Wednesday. And it looks real similar to the resolution we did last year. If we're not successful with that, we're going to take a look at a process of special impact fees for that area. And what that would be is creating a special district for the Mullan area that would help generate funds as development occurs that would let us build out the rest of the project. And so that will probably take more time for that to happen, but it gives us a funding mechanism to complete the whole package. If you'll remember, we're working on a master plan for the area. Here's the website for the master plan effort. That's ongoing, and there's still opportunities for people to participate in that. That's going to set the vision, the broad vision for the area. And then we also have stood up a website for the Mullan Build project. This is going to be more design specific elements related to those transportation corridors. So that's what I have tonight. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keene. So we have no council action this evening, and this public hearing will remain open. There is currently no one in the waiting room, but if council members would like to ask questions in preparation for your conversation at our next meeting about this, you are welcome to do so now.
I have a question. You had mentioned earlier that...
Mr. Contos, go ahead and raise your hand, please, in the chat room, because you got some other folks in front of you.
Okay.
Ms. Merritt.
Jeremy, I mean, this is probably what you're gonna tell us about on Wednesday, but I'm curious about that special impact fee district. And if it can just wait till Wednesday, that's just fine.
I had not planned to talk about it on Wednesday, but be happy to give you more thoughts on it tonight if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd appreciate maybe just a thumbnail of what that would look like. And I guess part of my thought process is if we're concentrating all of our impact fee money in one area, then other areas that might have benefited from that will not be. So maybe you can just give me a brief explanation of what that special district would look like.
Yeah, what we're seeing is that Mullan area, as development occurs, would need to pay an additional impact fee in order to support the infrastructure that's still needed. And so it would be an additional fee that would be directed to the Mullan area as development occurs. It would look a lot like the transportation impact fee that we have now. But it would be right now we have a district that encompasses the whole city. This would be a district that is specific for that Mullan area. So that's a process that we have to go through, and we would bring our consultant back, Tischler Bice, to help us work through the details of that. And obviously that needs to have some public discourse as well.
Mr. Contos.
Yes. You'd mentioned earlier that you applied for a grant for $26 million and received 13. Who was the grant from?
U.S. Department of Transportation.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The United States Department of Transportation.
Oh, that's great. Why did they deny the full 26? How's that work?
Politics. And limited resources.
Got it. Thanks.
But we've been encouraged by federal delegation to pursue this grant again this cycle.
I see.
Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeremy, I just wanted to make sure I understood your presentation in terms of the special district impact fee would only be utilized or brought into a conversation if we do not get awarded the second portion of the build grant that we are applying for in the 2020 grant cycle, correct?
That's correct. We're gonna pursue both options right now. So we'll pursue the build grant in 2020, and then we'll also start to look at a special district. And if we're successful with the build grant, we wouldn't need that special district.
Correct. And then on Wednesdays, when you're bringing the 2020 build grant to committee for further discussion, correct?
That's correct. Wednesday is a resolution of support for that 2020.
All right. Well, I'll save my questions about that for Wednesday.
Ms. Cheryl?
Jeremy, I just have a question. I'm trying to understand how the budget amendments work. So this doesn't actually change the city's commitment of $2 million, or are we increasing the city's commitment of $2 million? We're just moving the timing of that, correct?
Right. So the $2 million commitment doesn't change. We're just authorizing the actual budget authority to spend that $2 million. And right now we're only spending a portion of it, the initial $600,000 of it. And then in FY21, we'll allocate the next portion.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to be clear. That's it. Thank you.
Are there further questions this evening? I don't see any hands up. All right, well, we will hold this public hearing open until the next regular council meeting. In the meantime, Mr. Keene and Ms. Griffin, thank you. Oh, Ms. Anderson, did you have something?
No, I was just hoping, Mr. Mayor, that you could take an opportunity to reiterate why it is that we are changing protocol just ever so slightly, and how people, because we're keeping it open for another week, can provide comment.
Sure. So the reason we're doing this is so we have learned a number of things as a function of COVID-19, and we've had to do a number of things as a function of the virus as well. And during conversations with staff and council leadership, it occurred to us that the traditional way of doing public hearings, wherein we have a committee presentation that you all hear, and then you hear the same presentation on the evening of the public hearing, and then we typically have public comment, debate, and vote on the same evening as the public hearing, is not as effective as it could be. And a lot of folks get questions answered on the evening of the public hearing. So my hope is that we open public hearing, we get staff presentation, we hear questions, we hear comments from audience during the meeting, and then they have the entire remainder of the week to review meeting and comment in a variety of ways, including the telephone number that is associated with the Citizens Guide on our agenda, email through eScribe, which all council members see, and then live comment again up until the time of that meeting for the public hearing. So trying to give people more opportunity, maybe a little more time for you all to digest some of that comment and think about those questions. So that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Thanks so much. I appreciate the explanation, and I am excited for this new way of doing things for a little bit.
You bet. All right, so seeing no additional questions with regard to the public hearing, it will remain open. And we have no additional public hearings this evening. We'll move on to communications from the mayor. Just want to let folks know that that a number of restaurants and retailers who were not open before are now open. They're open at limited capacity. They're open under the guidance of the City County Health Department, CDC, and additional guidelines from the governor's office. Please support those businesses. We're opening back up slowly and cautiously, but those folks could use your support. But for the fact that we're having a council meeting right now, I might be out eating somewhere. Maybe it's best that I'm not. And we're going to continue to work with the business community to talk about what's open, how safe it is. And we'll keep plugging along as we adjust to the new normal, as we say. We'll begin comments of council members this evening with, I'm just going to take them as you appear on my screen. Ms. Cheryl.
I'm going to pass this evening. Thank you.
And Ms. Merritt.
Pass.
Mr. Von Lossberg.
Pass.
Ms. Jones.
Yes, I did want to make a comment. I just wanted to point out that there was a big article today on the fact that the University of Montana will be doing summer school, summer credit classes. It will be remote learning, it'll be online, but they have changed their fees for this summer so that people who are in state and out of state will all have a very low fee. So the door is really open, it's quite accessible, and also they are allowing anyone in the community that wants to take these classes. So you don't necessarily need to be a student that's already enrolled. So if you're interested, I think you should look into it. They had hundreds of classes they're going to be offering this summer, and the door is open. So now is a great time to engage with our university and get some students in there. Thanks so much.
Mr. Contos.
I'm good, thank you.
Ms. Wasika.
I'll pass, thank you.
Ms. Hart.
I do have a comment. Last week, Thursday and Friday was Missoula Gives, and Missoula, thank you so very much for stepping up and crashing through the goal that Missoula Gives had set out of $500,000. We, as a community, donated to all our nonprofits $767,000. And I just want to really put out a very heartfelt thank you to all of you for pitching in, because all of these organizations provide such a great service to our community. So thank you.
Ms. Becerra.
I too want to thank our community for being so generous, and also to a lot of the organizations that shifted their priority in terms of fundraising to fundraise for a much meaningful, to some degree, cause, which is to help our neighbors, help all the organizations that are helping people who are being affected by the pandemic. So thank you, Missoula, for continuing to be a good neighbor. Thanks.
Ms. West.
Thank you. Another thing that happened last week, obviously, is that Missoula County Public Schools decided to continue distance learning for the rest of the school year, which impacts many people in our community. I think a good thing about it is to know what's happening, and it allows us to plan for, the remainder of the school year. And I did want to just briefly speak about how we use our public lands. My kids and I have been spending probably more time than ever out on our parks and trails that are close to our community, and just to make sure that you follow the guidance that the Parks Department has put out on how to appropriately social distance, and to make sure that we're not creating a bunch of user trails that are caused by folks just stepping off the trail and continuing to walk. We have a lot of wildflowers and some endemic species that could be really negatively impacted. And so just to be cognizant of how you move through those public spaces. Thanks.
Ms. Anderson.
It's hard to know when you're up, but thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Ms. Jones for bringing up the opportunity that the university is providing our public. And as a proud alumni of the University of Montana, I would encourage everyone to take advantage of that. And especially my personal plug, if there's any classes being taught by Meridad Kia, he is a treasure. And I always felt like those were the best classes and they were always packed. So if an opportunity for the community to engage in that is a gift that you will be thankful that you take a part of. And I just want to reiterate my comments from last week. We are starting to slowly open back up, but that does not mean that the virus has left our community. And I really encourage folks to, take the precautions, practice social distancing, and wear the mask. It's not required, but it's the right thing to do. You're protecting yourself and so many vulnerable people in our community. As testing is being shown throughout the country, there are lots of people who are asymptomatic carriers, and they obviously wouldn't mean to be out in the community and spreading the virus, but they can be, and wearing a mask from them and wearing a mask for you just helps protect all of us. They have all sorts of amazing community people are making very fashionable ones. You can go very or very industrial, but just please continue to do the right thing and protect all of us. And the more we do these sorts of measures, the more we will be able to open back up, and the more our community's economic engine will be able to get back going. So I just really encourage that. I've not left my house very much, but in the last few weeks, but when I have, I am heartened by those in our community who are wearing the masks, and it's disheartening to see that there are still many who are not given all the information that we have. So please, everyone, for all of us, do the right thing. Thanks.
Mr. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to echo your thoughts, actually, and let people know that these businesses are opening up and they need our support now more than ever. They've certainly completely changed their business models, and they have taken all the necessary precautions as laid out by the health department. But these businesses need our support, and I think it's awesome that Missoula Gives raised $750,000 this year, but a lot of that money came from small business owners and came from capitalism and people going and visiting these businesses and generating that revenue. So in order for them to keep doing that and doing great things for our community, they certainly need our support. I mean, I've heard some silliness about these small businesses putting profits over lives, and that is by far that is the furthest thing from the truth that there could be. They're putting their services out there and providing value to the community, and not only that, they're providing a tremendous amount of jobs. A very big percentage of our community's jobs come from small businesses, and so many other ways that they give back, not just by providing delicious food and services that we like, but also by doing amazing things like Missoula Gives and other donations and volunteer work as well. So just wanted to echo your thoughts on that, Mr. Mayor, and add a little of my own.
Mr. Hess.
Yes, thank you.
So we have no committee reports this evening, no new business, oddly enough. Do we have any additional items to be referred this evening? Seeing none of those, miscellaneous communications, reports, petitions, or announcements? Seeing none, as always, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your service. We have no one in our waiting room, and we will be adjourned. Thank you all.